Alright, class, I'm putting this together to talk about the annotated bibliography and to show you, kind of walk you through the beginnings of this. So first thing you want to do, like we've talked about, is start with your name up the top left hand corner, and then our class. Date, and the assignment. Usually I know we go in and say have an original title. For this, I'll be okay with annotated bibliography. So if you want to title that annotated bibliography, that's just fine for this assignment. So the first thing we want to do is decide on an article or a chapter or whatever it is that you've picked to annotate to use in your iSearch paper. So for the sake of this example, I chose Mrs. Kelly. We read earlier this semester by Paul Austin. So basically for my iSearch paper, I'm going to be researching how people make mistakes and don't listen to their gut, and how we can do a better job at that. So Mrs. Kelly fits in well with that, and so I'll be using that as one of my sources. So the first thing we need to do is cite the article, or the chapter in this case. So like I mentioned in class, the best thing to do is go to EasyBib, and this is the screen that'll pop up for you. And this is a home screen, and it'll give you a bunch of different options. So if you want to cite a website, a book, a newspaper, journal, database, and there's also this tab, which is 59 options, all of them. Since Mrs. Kelly was a chapter in a book called True Stories Well Told, my option would be to use chapter anthology. As you can see over on the left-hand side here, they have the most popular, so book, digital image, film, online video, journal article. Journal article maybe, or more in the majority of yours will be journal articles. So kind of keep that in mind, that's their online database, websites. And then they also have all these that you could choose from also. We'll be coming back to this one, right, because we have to do an interview for the iSearch paper, so we'll be using this a little bit later. But let's go ahead with chapter anthology and see what we got. So this is what pops up for the information that EasyBib is asking for. So start here. You can go here and search for your book that it comes out of. I'm going to skip this. You can try that if you'd like. It does work, but I'm going to skip this and just go into here to show you how that works. So the chapter or section title is Mrs. Kelly. And then select one of these, and it's a chapter. So we leave that selected. And the contributors, Paul Austin wrote it. So we'll put in Paul Austin here. He was the only one that wrote that chapter, so we don't need any more. And we go into the book title, and I have the book here available. So True Stories Well Told is the book title. And then here they ask you for the advanced info, and since I have the book here, I can find that the first couple pages. And it was published in 2014. By Creative Nonfiction. So on this slide, what I do is just try to find all the information I can put in here. The city. Some of this stuff you won't be able to find, but if it is there, then you want to find that. and enter that in. And actually, it looks like the publisher is in Fact Books rather than Creative Nonfiction. And if I can spell, that'd be good. And for volume, edition, series, this book doesn't have that information, so we don't need to worry about putting that in. So that's all we can do, except for the start and end page. We can enter that in, because I have that information as well. So that would be pages 129 to 147. So before you add the annotation, you kind of look over it again, make sure everything looks correct. Everything looks good. We can add here contributor. We did the author of the chapter. We can also add the editor of the whole book. So section editor would be like a chapter. Source would be the whole book. So we can do source editor since we have that information. And that was Lee. Wrong spot. And there's another editor, so we should add that one in. And it's Hattie Fletcher. So that's all the information we could really add at this point, so that we can create our citation. Okay, so hooray, here we go. Here's your new citation. So here's the citation that we're going to need to add to our annotated bibliography to start off for this source. So let's look at it though to make sure. Paul Austin is cited correctly. Mrs. Kelly is in quotes. That's the title of a chapter, so that's good. True stories well told are in italics, which is what we need. And then everything else looks good. So we can copy and paste the citation. And now that we have the citation here, it says copy and paste option. Click that and it showed copied. So now we can go back to our Word document. And we're all set up where we belong, and go in and paste. So this is what I was talking about with EasyBib. So we saw it on the website and it looked right, but we see some issues now. So the main issue in green here is that True Stories Well Told is the name of a book, and it has no longer italicized. So we need to make sure that we check that. And now it's italicized. And lastly, when we create a citation, the only line that should not be indented is this first line up top. The second line should always be indented, and everything underneath that should be indented. So when we start our summary, our annotation, then we'd actually start writing here as well, because we want to make sure it looks the same format that I handed out in class, correct? So you want to make sure that looks the same. So we can start here, and what I suggest for writing your annotation is first, like it says in Chapter 2 of the Annotated Bib from 21 Genres. First thing I would do is give a sentence or two about what is the piece of text that you're using, what is it about, summarize it a little bit. So I'm using Paul Austin's Mrs. Kelly. I would summarize it by explaining what happened in Mrs. Kelly. So something to the effect of, So here's a good stopping point. Let's talk about this real quick. So when we get to this word, this verb, I gave you a handout in class that helps with those verbs. So let's go to that actual website. So this is a handout I gave you folks. So I would choose a word from here, a verb, to describe what Paul Austin is doing. For me, I chose describes, and then I'll go into how Paul Austin described his article, or excuse me, his chapter. Okay, so that's basically a summary of what happened in the chapter in Paul Austin's Mrs. Kelly. We probably add one more sentence explaining that. So, good, summary. And this is a little bit longer. I got a little carried away there, but basically what you want to do is answer the what is it about. Then we want to go into assessment. Is the source or authoritative, well-written, recent, those kind of questions you want to ask. So as far as authoritative, I definitely think that Paul Austin was authoritative because he was a doctor and he's experienced in the field, and so it's not someone that has no experience that's talking about, it's not me talking about soccer when I've never played a soccer game in my life. So if it was me talking about baseball, then yeah, I would have some authority on him. So since Austin is talking about the medical field and making decisions, then he does have authority. So it would be okay to assess this and say that Austin is an authoritative writer in that sense. Also, was it well written? How recent is it? Those are things you need to think about for the assessment portion of this. So something like, so that would be pretty simple one sentence assessing the piece. If there's more, there's nothing wrong with if you want to leave it that, or you can add more to that. You can describe the reasons in more detail why you thought it was well written. I just kind of gave you an idea of why I thought it was well written because of the self-reflection and his questioning nature. But if there's other things that pop in your mind about the article or whatever the piece of text you have, then go ahead and use it in that area, that section, the assessment. The next thing you want to address is the relevance. So this is what we talked about in class, the so what, whether it's your own writing or someone else's writing. So what's the point? Why did this person write it? Why did you write it? And so kind of take some time to think about what was the point of this person sitting down and writing this. So for me, writing this annotated bib, the point of me doing this is to kind of help you guys and guide you through writing this assignment. For Paul Austin, since you guys have written it, or read it, you probably have some ideas of why he wrote it. Since I'm writing this bib, I have to decide why I believe he wrote it. So something to the effect in this area could be So that would be, for me, an answer to the so what question. And kind of bear with me here. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. But I think that would cover the so what question, the relevance. Why is this important? Austin's short story is important because it illustrates the importance of listening to your instinct, the little voice inside your head. Mrs. Kelly also shows a behind-the-scenes view of hospitals and delves into the uneasiness that surrounds death. Now, I don't know if you noticed when I was reading this, but when I read important here and then important here, the repetition there I didn't care for. So Austin's short story is important because it illustrates the importance. So this is one of those times we talk about don't do this, the synonyms approach, but let's show when it's okay to do this. So if you're doing it just because you want to sound more intelligent, don't do that. But if you're doing it to kind of get rid of this and you take the time to really look at the synonyms and what's going to work, so let's do that. It'll work better here. Austin's short story is essential, key, imperative, significant. I think significant works there. So let's see. Short story is significant because, okay, that works there. But let's see if it might work better here if we change this importance. It illustrates the prominence, significance, meaning, weight. So a lot of those don't work, but significance would work here also. It's just a matter of where you think it'll sound better. Austin's short story is important because it illustrates the importance. So Austin's short story is significant because, or it is important because it illustrates the significance of listening. For me, I think it sounds better here. Okay, so that's your annotation. In order to keep it where it's supposed to be formatted wise, we need to move this over, and then you guys are probably already saying it, but this all needs to be double spaced. That's easy to do. So there's one annotation. Done. I'm going to go into an interview. Since now we've already done a text piece, let's look at an interview and see how we'd go about that. So for an interview, who should I interview? Let's say I interviewed my grandmother, who's passed away, so this is going to be a really good interview. But let's say I interview her because Austin's talking about dealing with making poor decisions when you should listen to your gut. So my grandmother popped into my head because she decided to move to Sacramento, and after she moved from Modesto to Sacramento, she realized that she should have stayed in Modesto. And so I remember talking to her about listening to your gut. So let's pretend I interviewed my grandmother. So we'd go over here to all 59 options, down to interview, and then we're going to have to fill in the blanks. What does EasyBib ask us for? So personal interview, we need to select that. Personal interview by you, that's me. Interview title, so you need to give this a title. I'll title mine one on, let's do this, with Janice King. That's my grandmother's name. I interviewed her today, let's say. So 14 of April 2015. And let's make it where I care. I did it in person. So the interviewer, that would be me. And then also I noticed you can add another contributor and you can do the interviewee. And so let's put my grandmother in there because that's who I interviewed. So I filled all the information that EasyBib's asking for, create the citation. And there we go. There's our citation. Copy and paste it. Tells me it's copied. Come over here. Paste it in. Personal interview, everything looks good. Come down, tab over so we're in the right spot. Same thing, right? We talked about what is it about. So summary, give me a line of summary. Give me like 1 or 2 sentences of summary, 1 or 2 sentences of assessment. Tell me about the source, how the interview go, that kind of thing. And then the relevance, the so what. Why is this interview important to your bibliography? So let's get creative here. My interview So again, I was using shed here, but let's go back for purposes and look at that signal phrase, the verbs. So you can pick from here if it fits. Demonstrates would be a good one. I'll show you how that would work. Or supports, that would be a good one too. Let's go with demonstrates. So my interview with Janice King demonstrates the So that would be a couple sentences summarizing the interview. And then going to assessment, is the source or authoritative? Was the interview well done? How established is the interviewer? And how recent was the interview? So again, Okay, so that kind of deals with the assessment portion. Now we need to go into the so what question. Why is this important? Why is this interview important? So that would wrap up the relevance, the so what, and that would wrap up that annotation for that source. So your guys' assignment, or your assignment, is to have 3 articles and then 1 interview on your annotated bibliography. So I've showed you how to do a piece of text here, and then an interview here. Oh. This is the proper formatting. Once I do this, everything's double spaced. So this is the way it should look. Obviously, with 3 annotations for 3 different pieces of text, and then 1 annotation for an interview that you took care of. Again, if you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to email me. The last thing I want to touch on is this is from our 21 Genres book, and this is the PDF that you all have online on lore. So I just want to touch on these real quick. What are its purposes of the annotated bibliography? A fundamental purpose of all citation information is to help those who may follow your research trail. Researchers build on other research and rely on previous writers' bibliographic information. By creating any kind of bibliography, you guide readers of your paper to your own sources. By annotating your bibliography, you do a service to your readers. You save them from having to find and skim the source to determine its relevance to their own research question. So the main purpose of an annotated bibliography is to provide readers with a short, informative statement that will help them determine the value of the source for their own work. Annotating the bibliography also serves important purposes for you, the writer. It helps you remember what was in a particular source. If you include some thoughts on the contribution the source makes to your overall project, you'll soon find that your head is full of ideas about what to write. I can't agree with this more. Just writing this bibliography for you guys, I'm not even writing the paper, excuse me. And I was thinking of ideas of how I would write this paper. So when you're doing this bibliography, really give it your full attention because it will help with your writing of your iSearch paper down the road. I want to touch on this, the typical content. And so we talked about this already when I was writing this, but summary is the most basic annotation. So what is it about? Assessment might come in a second sentence or paragraph. Is the source authoritative, recent, well written? We talked about that. And then a third sentence or paragraph can focus on its relevance to the reader or the writer's work. How does it affect your thinking? So we touched on that as well in both of those annotations. And lastly, I want to touch on this, what pronouns are used. You won't see much use of I or you in the annotated bibliography. So let's go back through. I know I did it once in here, but let's go back through and see if that holds true in what I just wrote. So good. Nothing in that one, no I's or U's. There's an I here, and I'm okay with that. I was thinking about when I was writing it, it's going to be kind of difficult for you folks to not use I when you're talking about an interview that you took place in, so interview that you conducted. So I'm okay with it here. Be careful though in your interview annotation because you may run into that issue. But I mean, I used it once. It shouldn't be too big of a deal, but try to just be aware of that. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to touch on. This went a little long. I apologize for that. Hopefully it didn't put you to sleep. But this is a good reference for you guys to go back to if you need help with anything. And again, I'm always available as a reference. Email me if you have any questions or you want to talk about anything. And good luck. I'll see you all tomorrow.